What's up, everyone, and welcome to Clear Talk. So in this video, we're going to talk about marriage, all right, and what my thoughts on the marriage institution and societal norms around marriage, my opinions on that. So as I've stated before in other video, in previous video, I've been in a relationship now with my girlfriend for about 6 years. And I've previously had 2 marriages. And this relationship is longer than both of those marriages, individually. So, but the one thing that me and her, have always fought, or not necessarily fought, but just like have had to constantly be put and thrown on us is, you know, that big question: when you getting married? When you getting married? When you getting married? I mean, you know, you're not married yet, you know, and that's because that's a societal norm and pressure that, you know, once you're in some sort of serious relationship, that's just the automatic next step is to get married. You know, it's like a solidifying thing on somebody, or, you know, that's the only way to confirm to the world that you are, you know, some binded couple, you know, or whatever. And I don't think it, in my personally, I think it's silly. Throughout history, it has had completely different, it has had different, like, meanings or different ultimate objectives, I think, that has been forgotten or just ignored. And in today's, like, marriage ecosystem or whatever, you know, what people, the meaning behind it, and what people revere it as being, and what meaning or whatever, and it depends upon, and depends upon a person's religious, you know, beliefs and stuff like that. It's how they actually, what they consider marriage to be, and what it should be between, or whatever. And those are, you know, misunderstood concepts from history, from religious texts and things like that, in that realm, you know, and for people who have certain opinions on marriage. But understand and realize that a lot of times in history, marriage has been used for all the wrong reasons. And the whole institution of marriage has been used for, in my opinion, all the wrong reasons. From just misogynistic, you know, pressure on society, you know, man control, to economical power and control, you know, and to suppress women in general, has been, that's like been a major foundation for marriage throughout a large portion of our history, or known history anyways. And so those, in my opinion, are for all the wrong reasons. And then you have some people that will sit there and state like that is, you know, the reason for marriage is like say Matt Walsh, a guy that I loathe. I absolutely loathe this man, and how, and the ideologies that he pushes on his followers and viewers, is just absolutely ridiculous, and so misogynistic, so just old school ridiculous ideologies, and thoughts and opinions on marriage and relationships and all this kind of stuff. You know, that, and his defense of what a marriage should be, and the defense of, you know, even the, you know, young age in a marriage and stuff like that. It's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And the idea that, you know, marriage should only be between a man and a woman, I think is ridiculous. You know, in defense of that marriage is, how he states, is the base and purpose of marriage is to basically have children and populate the world. That's what the foundation for marriage is. And when you question him on, well, you know, isn't marriage really supposed to be kind of like, I don't know, maybe love between two people? You know, I mean, that's the way we kind of feel. You know, you love somebody, so then you know, the next step in the societal norm is to then get married. You know, it should be married for love. And his answer is, well, I mean, you know, I mean, you can't, you know, that's not, in his opinion, that's not even really a foundation for marriage. The marriage is just strictly between a man and a woman to basically just have children and populate the world. And love is like some kind of second nature thing for it. Like, yeah, if love's in it, then nah, I mean, that's just like, you know, I guess a cherry on top, I guess, perhaps. I mean, it's like, that's just absolutely ridiculous. And that's something that comes from historical, cultural norms that has happened in history. I mean, you know, being married off to people by your parents to try to keep an economic status, or to, you know, to bind families together so that you could, you know, solidify some type of, you know, particular lifestyle, or like I said, financial reasons, you know, to help support each other or whatever, or, you know, and it's usually the support of the parents and the family and at large, you know, not concerning with your feelings or your thoughts or whatever, you know. I mean, just that whole idea to me is ridiculous. And, you know, it sucks that was even, you know, something that had to be, or that was practiced, right? But that's the way, you know, it has had that type of practice in history. And even in some aspects, even today, it still exists in certain cultural and religious sects that still try to practice that today. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We have just recently, I think it was Wyoming or something, where they were having an argument, or a law was trying to be passed by the Democratic establishment there, to raise the age limit to, I think originally was 18. Which, I mean, if you want to get into the nuances of how young is too young, I mean, we could talk about it. I think there's a discussion there that can be had. I think 18 is reasonable, but the conservative Republican pushback on that, they wanted to push it back down. They wanted to hold it down to 16 as an acceptable age for someone to be married or whatever. But then there was still further push for it to, because right now there is no age limit. Like, and their argument for even pushing for the continuation of that was that is because of like the Amish tradition and stuff that was in the state, that, you know, that religious group of people, cultural people, they still practice that kind of stuff. And so if we passed a law, if they passed a law for it to be 18 or up, then the Amish people would, that law would, you know, go against them. They could be found guilty of, you know, breaking that law, you know, and that was not fair for their religious freedom. Now, you know, I have a problem with that, and that's where my problem with religion in those types of practices, you know, conflict with me. But at the same time, my side where I say, well, you should have the freedom to do what you can, but there's also limits to that freedom, right? I mean, there should be certain limits to those freedoms and protections for individuals, you know, if and when they want them, you know. So I'm a little torn on even on that, you know. It's because it's like, in my opinion, yes, I see that it's absolutely ridiculous to allow somebody younger, you know, or younger under a certain age to get married. But at the same time, my conflict with allowing people to be who they are and be what they believe in, although in my opinion that's kind of forced, right? I hate that, and it's stupid. It sucks, and why these practices are still going on just it sucks. And you know, I guess you ultimately want to somehow try to change or you know, ultimately move those types of ideologies, you know, in a you know, like the Overton window for it or whatever, you know, move it more in a more respectful or free, non-suppressed kind of, because, you know, it's like you want to allow them freedom, but in their own freedom, they are suppressing. That's something that's hard to really grasp, right? Or really, you know, wrap your head around. And allowing a particular group to have freedom, their freedom is suppressing a group within that group, right? And it's kind of hard to wrap around when it comes to the idea of complete freedom, like, you know, and that's the reason why I say you can have freedom, but there are certain, obviously certain personal rights that should also be upheld as well, right? It's not just the freedom of the religion, but the freedom of the individuals in the religion as well. And if the religion is not allowing that freedom for those individuals, then should that religion even have full freedom, right? Like it's a hard, nuanced argument to be had there, in a discussion to be had. So it's like, for one side of me, I'm like, okay, yeah, I think it's perfectly right for the state itself to have this limit. And if the, you know, the religion or the, you know, group of people, their cultural practice doesn't adhere to that, then, you know, I don't know how you go about that. How do y'all feel about that? Do y'all feel like no matter what, it should be enforced? Should there be, I hate to even say that, but should there be like exceptions carved out for it? Because that seems like, you know, it's like you're, you know, on one hand trying to protect, young people and children, but on the other hand, uh, but on the other hand, at the same time, you're allowing for, that group to be. You're saying it's okay for that group to be suppressed because you're wanting to give an exception to an arbitrary ideology that a culture or religion has. It's a very gray area that's hard to really, you know, carve out the nuances and what is right and wrong and what is, should be limited and not limited and allowed and not allowed. I mean, it's such a hard thing. So, I don't think marriage should be something that's pressed, and pushed on people. I don't think, you should be allowed to just be you, to be allowed to just have a relationship, love somebody the way you want to love them. It shouldn't be pressed that only certain types of people can get married or, whatever. I completely believe in freedom of marriage, freedom of love who you want, marry who you want. And this will continue into a video that I will do on the LGBTQ plus issues, because in my opinion, they should be able, anybody should be able to marry and love who they want. I think it's silly to try to hold marriage to some arbitrary ancient historical beliefs that it's just between this person and that person or whatever, and that, the love between two other people doesn't matter. And shouldn't have those rights. I think that's just silly. I think it's just stupid. But also the pressure that society pushes on people to get married is ridiculous. Especially, I mean, and all the arguments fall on their face when you look at the historical value of marriage, even in the last 30, 50 years. I mean, the way people have how marriage, I mean, it's just it shows itself to be manipulative and ungenuine in many ways. I mean, half of marriages are roundabout half of marriages end in divorce anyways. And I think that has come about from the freedoms that have been given to more people, like women in general, have given more freedom in marriage over the last 50 years or so. So they have more say so, because when you look at it, people will bring up, well, back in that day, marriages, people were married for their whole lifetime, and it's just now people don't even want to love each other. And it's just like, in history, people were also forced to be with each other, and they felt confined to that marriage, and even to some degree didn't have the right to make a decision or change in that marriage. Women particularly didn't have that right. They were forced and had to stay in that marriage, had to stay with that person regardless of what conditions that marriage was bringing to them. I mean, you can't make that argument when certain freedoms were not even allowed, and then the societal pressure in that time as well to stay together, and the family, the nuclear family BS. I mean, it's a completely different time, and understanding that time was different and how it has changed, and sometimes different doesn't mean better. Just because it looks and sounds like, oh, but back then people were together for so much longer. I mean, marriages were sometimes lifetime marriages. But how many of those marriages legitimately had love? How many of those marriages legitimately were, people truly wanting to be together that whole time? Or was it forced and pressured on them? What percentage of that was where they were just felt they had no other way, no other options, because of either lack of rights or societal pressure and cultural pressure to stay together, to fit some mold that was being pressured on by society, the social pressures of that. I mean, now you have more freedom for people to make the decisions and realize when they've gotten themselves into something that they don't want to be in and shouldn't be in many cases, and now they have the freedom to get out, which I think is what it should be. Sometimes you get yourself into situations that you didn't realize what they were going to be. Because sometimes, let's be realistic, people don't act like their true selves beforehand. Sometimes when somebody finally gets somebody, into a marriage, they, start really showing their true colors, right? Because they find that now they've got this bind and control that they can now enforce. And that stems from the historical precedent of, marriage in those times that were so much supposedly better. And that stigma still, exists. And is thought to, to be exploited by those who want to exploit it or think they can. So, yeah, I think that you should be able to the whole idea of marriage, in my opinion, and what and what that holds in society needs to change. Because it's the history of it has not always been, rainbows and unicorns or whatever. There has been some harsh, suppressed, history around marriage. And, in my opinion, love should be the ultimate thing for marriage. Love should be what, people actually get married for. And it shouldn't be confined to, having children or staying together for eternity. Even the whole vow thing, in my opinion, is ridiculous. It just is. But on the other hand, I understand why people, the thought that if you're getting married, it is supposed to be some sort of commitment, to that person. And I understand committing to somebody. There's no problem. I don't have a problem with committing to somebody. But the arbitrary thought of, I'm committed to you for the rest of my life until death do us part. That whole part there is, in my opinion, ridiculous. And because and although you can look at it as well, no, it's just straight ridiculous. I had a thought there, but then it was something else different. It was if it was more like, commitment till we part. Why are we pressuring to death? Why are we pressuring, for because it gives this whole like stronghold or this thought, this opinion, this or whatever, that you're binded to this person no matter what till you die. And that's just silly to me. I don't agree with it. You know, if it should be a personal thing where you're binded to this person until you feel that the need that to unbind, quite frankly. I mean, if that ever comes about for whatever reason, you know, so, you know, committed to each other till you're not, basically. And I think that's perfectly okay. And it should be okay. So, yeah, you know, that for me is what marriage is and should be. Something that is, and I think if that was it, people would be more genuine about that and be more genuine about marriage being about love, then marriages probably would be more successful if they were genuinely about love. And wouldn't have such a bad taste in the mouth for so many people today. Me particularly. I mean, so what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on marriage? What are your thoughts on the pressures of society on people to get married? You know, the pressures that some groups of people want to press on marriage only between certain people, or that marriage is only for having children and populating the earth, or whatever. Put in the comments. Let's get a conversation started. Let me know what you think. So if you like this video, like, comment, share. And if you like this content, consider subscribing. And yeah, that's going to be this video. Thank you for watching if you've gotten to this point. And until next time, this has been Clear Talk. Peace.